but it should be objectives, or objective for today is the learner will understand the fundamentals of checking for understanding and creating test banks for multiple questions. If Ms. Smith has not placed the link to this presentation, it is right here. It's the same thing, bit.ly. This is what we like to use for shortened links to wherever we're trying to get you to. And the end is Schoology Test Quiz Walk. Okay, so it's the title of this presentation altogether, no hyphens and no spaces in between all of that. And she should be putting that on the back channel. Okay. Topics for today's training, we're going to look at question banks, creating questions in question banks, and then adding them to a test quiz. The reason we do it this way is to ensure that when you are creating your test quiz, right, that if you do it this way, you'll save yourself a lot of time, especially when it comes to creating test quiz as you're building. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to build a bank of a variety of different questions in order for you to do what you need to do with test quiz. Okay, let me see what's going on here. Do I need to open up the shared link? I thought I shared it. It's restricted. Let me fix that. I'm sorry. I can fix that. Oh, it should be Aldine. Okay, there it is. It should be viewed. All right. Okay, hopefully that fixed it. This is the first time I'm using this. If there are still any issues, let me know in the back channel and we can get that fixed, okay? If you can't access the presentation right now, no worries. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with the actual where to get question banks or where to set this all up. And the place you're gonna do this is in the resources, right? So when you're in Schoology, I'm gonna flip back and forth between this presentation so you can follow along with me. Okay, I guess it is working now. I see people popping in. That is great. And remember, as you're using, or if you're viewing this presentation, you can always make your own copy. You have to just go to File and make a copy, and it will be your own. Okay, so here we are in my Schoology home resource page, and what we do is we can go to Add Resources, right? And then we're going to go down here to where it says Add Question Bank, right? When we do that, we're going to go ahead and label our question bank. So this will depend on how you decide to create your test quiz. So if you want to do it by 9 weeks, you can. This is a folder, so just keep that in mind that folders can be created into subfolders. So for example, let's start with first 9 weeks, right? Because what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and create this, and I'm going to show you something. I'm going to click. And you notice now I have a question bank folder, right? What I can do now is I can click inside that folder, right? And now I have the ability to start adding questions within that question bank, right? Now, if you want to be more organized and you want to go by 3 weeks, this is what you're going to need to do in order to ensure that that happens. So what you do is you're going to click Add Resources, and you're going to create a folder, right? When you create that folder, you're going to go ahead and name that also first 9 weeks. Okay, I'll go ahead and select it, right? The reason I show it to you this way is that some people will probably make the mistake of creating a full question bank first and then creating the folder afterwards. So what you really want to do is create the folder first, and then within the folder, you can add the resource, which is again the question bank, and then you can create the question banks based on how you want to address your assessment. So if you want to do, in this instance, 3-week checkpoint, right, which is usually when we want to give tests and quizzes or anything in general, just make sure that the name fits what you want it to do, right? Once I create it, now I have my question bank folder. Now, I haven't done anything yet. I'm just kind of getting organized before I start putting in questions specific to either 3-week or even TEKS, right? So for example, I'm going to add another folder, a question bank folder. And let's say I'm doing 5.3. It's just an example. It's not accurate. I'm not familiar with all TEKS of all grade levels. So Let's just say you want to do it by teaks, right? You would then create it and then notice that this teak is placed into the 9 weeks based on your scope and sequence. So just kind of think about that in terms of organization. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the presentation, and that's kind of how you set yourself up in terms of how you're going to get your question banks organized. The key is organization. Okay, remember, if this is the first time you're doing it, it's going to take some work because you're setting yourself up. But keep in mind, after you've done this the initial time, the next time you reuse this, which would be next year or even next semester, depending on what grade level you're in, you already have the questions there. It's just a matter of you now putting it into your courses, right? So keep that in mind in terms of organization. Another thing that I did not go over, but just keep this in mind when you create a question bank, if you click on the enable question tracking, what will happen is you cannot edit the questions in that question bank anymore. So just don't click it, my recommendation. So if you see it there and you're wondering what it does, don't click the button is what I'm going to say about that. Okay. Next thing is we're going to look at the type of questions that are available in a test quiz. Now, if you were in assessments in the earlier session, you noticed that there are a bigger variety of question types in assessment. The reason that test quiz is still available as well as assessment is because in test quiz, you have the ability to create question banks, which you do not in assessment. And also when you're creating questions, this is more for math people. You have the ability to add equations and symbols of that nature in terms of math. So math people favor test quiz a little more, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let me go into my question bank, right? I'm going to select a 3-week checkpoint. Okay. Now I can add questions. So let's look at the 6 question types, overviewing them really quickly. So let's start with true and false. In true and false, it's straightforward. Type in the question, and then you will type in, it's already typed in for you, but you get true and false here, right? Now, if they select either true or false in terms of whether they get it right or wrong, if you see here, require a correction if false. So it has to be on false in order for you to be able to click, right? And then if they are able to correctly name what that change should be or what the word should be, then you would place it in correct phrase and then the correction weight in terms of if they don't put in the correct answer, then it would be subtracted. So in my opinion, I would not really mess with that. I would kind of leave it blank. True or false is straightforward, but I'm just showing it to you just so you know what it does. The other thing, and this is for all questions, is the learning objectives. You can align your learning objectives for each question that you're setting up. So what you do is you click Align, you look for state standards, Texas, there's TEKS. I'm going to select language arts. I'll select 3rd grade, and let's say it's 3.1a. It's just a random objective. Remember, objectives are based on the questions you ask, but I will click on it and you will notice that it pops up. Now, the reason why we align a learning objective is as students are doing the test quiz, you're accumulating data in terms of how the students are performing on TEKS. So when you're being asked questions about how students are performing or how they're progressing, doing it this way allows you to be able to know where the students are at in terms of their progression or what strong students are doing great and what TEKS. And then this allows you to kind of manipulate your small group. So you're kind of thinking ahead of the game in terms of how you're going to set all this up. Okay. So once I type in my text, you do have the ability to manipulate the text. You have bold, italic, bullet. What I wanted to show you was you have other items such as formatting. So you have superscript, subscript, right? You can align the text. You can add links. So that could be videos, images. So if you upload an image and tell them, does the Mona Lisa have a nose? True or false? That kind of where the link can make itself valuable. You could put videos, but just keep in mind, With videos, there's time, and then there's also the possibility of ads if you're using a YouTube link. So keep that in mind. Here is where you can insert content. And here's what I was talking about for the math people. You have equations, you have symbols, right? You can also add images and links, and there's your YouTube as well. You can do it that way if you want to avoid the possibility of ads, but I have not used it personally, so I cannot tell you what happens after you post that link. So it's going to be something you can test on your own and see what happens. But here's what I'm talking about in terms of symbols, all those options available to you. All right. And then here's equations, right? A variety of different equations, order of operations. There's your relationships. There's your equations, all that there. You have arrows. There's miscellaneous. There's Greek. Okay, and then you have the ability to either increase or decrease that font size. So as you're creating your questions, it's going to be a matter of you manipulating and kind of playing around with how it fits in terms of the tests and quiz setup. But the good thing, this is a question bank, so you're not setting up your test quiz yet. You're just kind of setting up your questions to get ready for that setup of the test quiz. Okay, once that's done, you click Create Question. And there it is, right? There's your first question bank question. Now we can move on to the next one, which is multiple choice. Okay, at this point, I'm not going to explain this top bar anymore. I've already explained what it does there. All the same for the majority of questions available in test quiz. So they do exactly the same thing. The only thing that changes is down here where you're setting up what you're trying to do with your answer setup. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in the information here. Right. Now for your answer choices on multiple choice, it's simple. You put whatever that answer choice is available to the student. And then once you have the correct answer placed in whatever slot it's placed in based on how you feel, you go ahead and click on it. Now, for those that need less answer choices, if you're setting up a test for accommodations, you do have the ability to remove blanks, right? Just like that. So all I did was click on remove blanks. So I have to actually delete. And then you see I can have up to 2 choices. Now, if I want to add more choices, I have the ability to add up to 15 choices, but I'm going to go ahead and click 2 to go back to 4. And
Michael.
then, yep.
I'm sorry, can you zoom in a little? Several people are saying they have a hard time seeing. Thank you.
We're good? Cool. Okay, I'll remember that. Okay, hopefully you can see now. So let me go back then and I'm gonna go back one step. So what I was saying is here on choice 3 and 4, since they are blank, you do have the ability to remove blanks, and they were both blank, so they both got removed. And this is in terms of accommodating students that need less answer choices. You do have that ability to do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and add them back. Oops. Okay. Right? So you see I have 3 here, and if I wanted to remove the blank, choice 4 would disappear, and there it is, right? Okay, I will re-add choice 4 again. Oops, and I will go ahead and zoom in. Make sure you click on the correct answer. Okay, now here's the other part of this type of question is randomized choices, meaning that when a student sees the question, and this would be more applicable in a classroom where they're all taking it simultaneously, this would make all the answer choices jumbled around. So if in the instance one shouts out the answer, it's A, it wouldn't apply to the other students in the classroom because of its randomization. Now there may be a possibility if there's 25 students, 4 others may have the same answer choice, but that we don't know because we don't know how it's randomizing. The other part is to allow partial credit. That's if, and if you see how I'm zooming over it, if you have multiple answers. So here's what I'm saying. If I select B and C as correct answers because it's a multi-answer response to the question, then this would be able to take effect in terms of setting up the question, right? And then again, learning objective, you align it to whatever TEK this question is asking, and then you go ahead and create the question. And I probably should put text in the question field. It's okay. Okay, now we're done with multiple choice. The next one is, zoom in here. The next one is ordering. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip back to my screen here, and we're going to go to ordering. Now, for ordering, it's essentially students putting the answers in sequential order, right? But to keep this in mind, that whenever you are setting up your question, whatever sequential order that may be, if it's going to, and I'm going to go back to Schoology so we can see this, put the following items in order, right? So it's an ordering question. So I'm going to put letters, just it's the easiest thing to kind of understand where we're going with this, right? And I'm thinking of other subjects like science, if you have the water cycle, you can place the water cycle in the correct order. Planets, put the planets in the correct order. ELA, parts of the plot, right? You start with the beginning and go to the ending. I'm forgetting what all those items are, but you get the idea of where I'm going at. Just questions that have multi-tiered items that go from a beginning to an end ensures that this type of question makes sense. Now, same thing, you can add more choices or remove them if needed. The key here in this type of question setup is the allow partial credit. Now, what will happen is it's going to score them based on the number of consecutive items they get correct. So in this instance, the number of consecutive items they could get in a row is 2, right? Before they miss one in the instance of that happening. So what Schoology will do in its system is it will award them points based on the number of sequential items they get correct. So keep that in mind. And I did place that in the presentation, right? It says that in this instance, if you see here, Sarah, she got 1, 2, 3, 4, right? It seems like she got 4 here. But what happens is that it gave her partial credit. So she got 5.71 in terms of her score because she got 4 consecutive answers correct before she missed 5, 6, and 7. So that's kind of where Schoology will grade that. Now, what could also happen is she could get 2, miss 1, get 2 right, miss 1, and she would only get credit for the 2 consecutive answer choices she got in that. And it says if you do not have partial credit enabled, the student would receive a 0. So keep that in mind, right? And it says when partial credit is enabled, you have the option to set minimum continuous sequence, which is, as I said before, 2. And it could go all the way up to 4, 5, 6. It just depends on how many answer choices you have available. But again, as I mentioned, the minimum would be 2 in this instance here. Okay.
Michael,
Yes.
remind them, that's what they were just asking. Remind them how to add or remove answer choices. I'm sorry.
I'm going to do that for the next one.
Multiple choice, yeah.
Okay, let me go back then. Okay, so for removing answer choices, what's going to happen is, let's say I'm going to put 3, right? Because the student receives 3 answer choices whenever they do an assessment. I fill in the ones that they're going to have the answer choice ability for, and then I click remove blanks. So what will happen is item 4 will disappear, right? And there it is. Okay. Now, if I wanted to add back item number 4, all I have to do is click add. Now, keep in mind that you can add more choices all the way up to, in this instance, 20, but we'll keep it at 1. When I click add, item 4 will reappear. And there it is, right? The other thing that I did not get to show you is with answer choices, and this is my fault, is using a rich text editor for the answer choices the student will have. So if I click on it, you will see here that that you will have the ability as an instructor to add specific answer choices, and this would probably relate to more higher level courses. I would think middle school, high school. And what I mean by that is if I were to click on insert content, I can use symbols and also equations in terms of them doing math problems, even sciences like your physics. But I think more in terms of this would be more applicable to your maths as well. But do you have to use rich text? The answer is no, you do not. The other thing also is in your answer choices, and I forgot to show you, this is the key to all of this, is when you're inserting content, you have the ability to also add images as your answer choices. So that's a key to all of this, right? And me personally, if I wanted to add an image, I love doing this. This is called snipping tool. If you're not familiar with snipping tool by now, you have missed out on a lot of great stuff. So a snipping tool, it allows you to kind of snip anything on your screen, right? So here you see I snipped an image of the Schoology test in terms of me when I was setting up for this presentation. So what you can do is if you have images for answer choices, you can attach those. And let me show you how this works. I'm going to attach that file that I just showed you, right? And this is what they're going to see, right? This is the image. I know it's big. Don't worry about it. This will not be the size of yours image, but I'm going to click save. And then look what happened. And you know what? Let me scroll in. Give me a second here. Right there. So you see for item 4, this is what the student would see in terms of answer choices. You see they have the ability not just to use letters, but they also have the ability to use images. So for my lower grade levels where answer choices would be more beneficial with images, you can use this. But keep it in mind that this is going to be very tedious because you just saw what I had to do. I had to snip images and then I had to paste them into the answer choices. But remember what I said, the first part of doing all of this is very tedious. It's going to be tedious. I'm not going to lie to you about it. But once you've done this, guess what? It's there now. The next time you assign this, it's there. I don't have to do anything. I just have to post it. That's it. So keep that in mind. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create the question. Oops, and I need a question in the question field. Right. Okay, that's ordering. Next is short answer essay. Okay. Same thing. I'm not going to go through this as in depth, but I do want you to note that this is the only question type that does not have an answer for you or for the system to kind of figure out, right? And what I mean by this is if you assign this type of question, you have to grade it. That's the easiest way to explain essay short answer. You have to grade it. So keep that in mind. Again, you have this available for your disposal. If you want to add character limits, meaning how many words they need to answer a question, you can do that. That's up to you. If it needs to be short and sweet, this is what you click. Allow rich text answer for students. And what rich text is exactly what I showed you from the previous question. From the previous question where we had that box and all the, it's essentially this. This is what rich text is. That's all it means. And then also allow video or audio answers for students. This is something that you can explore later, but I personally would not do it yet. Kind of get them used to using this system first and get yourself comfortable with how that works yourself before giving it to students. But again, this is something that you can explore. Also, there are other tools available for you to use for video audio that are outside of Schoology, but work with Schoology coherently. And we'll talk about those, that program tomorrow, as a matter of fact. Okay. The next key is here for printing. You do have the ability to print these assessments, and I'll show you that here at the end, but I just this is kind of where we're setting up. Whenever you're printing this assessment, if you decide to do so, this is important. If it's a short answer, they're going to get a certain amount of space on the paper, right? If it's an essay, then obviously that size increases because short answer and essay are two different types of response choices, right? Last thing is the rubric. This is a little thing, is a little different. If you do want to use a grading system for this type of question, you can create a rubric. Now, if you're going to use rubrics, this is a suggestion, keep it short and sweet, right? So one way to do it is you can copy from your resources, right? Meaning that it should already be there, but this is another out of the realm type of training. This is something you're going to have to be trained at another time, because rubrics has different elements that in respect to time, we won't get into it, but just keep in mind that you can attach rubrics as well, and then learning objectives here on the screen. Okay, the next question is fill in the blank, right? And I'm going to switch back to my presentation because I do want to show you some setups for fill in the blank, right? So when you're using fill in the blank, keep this in mind that whenever you're creating the question, right, make sure you give the, oops, I didn't mean to do that. All right, that should be good. So when you're using fill in the blank, right, be sure that whenever you're asking or whatever you want them to fill in, that is at the top part of your question, right? And then when you're typing the actual sentence stem or whatever it is you're creating, in order for the answers to appear, what I mean is your answer 1 and answer 2 for your blanks, you must use an underscore, right? So keep that in mind, using an underscore for that text box. So each underscore that you put in this box will then generate an answer that you would fill in for the students to respond to, right? And then you see here, you add additional underscores if you want multiple blanks in that question, right? And then the next part of that is if you look below here where it says add an answer, and you know what, let me flip back. This would be easier if I just do it this way. Right. Right, so how I put that underscore? Now it's thinking, and there it is, right? So here is what happens if you have an answer, right? So for an example, I'm going to put my name. That's my name, right? But let's say student is not familiar with capping, right? Meaning that he doesn't put a cap on his first initial of his name. I need to ensure that I have that there as far as an answer choice, which means I have to add that as an answer possibility, because some of my students could get uppercase, some of my students could get lowercase, and that would also apply to any type of answer choice you're using within that question. So how did I do that? Let me show you. I'm going to back up 1 second. You saw how I put the answer here. I'm going to click add an answer, and then I have answer 2, which means that do they have to get both? No. This means that the system will recognize either response if the student puts that in as their blank answer when they're looking at the question. The other thing is you have allow partial credit. Okay, meaning that if you have multiple blanks, if they get 1 out of 2, they still get the credit. It's not an all or nothing question, but again, that's up to you. You have word banks, right? Meaning that you don't make it, you give them the opportunity to be able to figure out possibly what answers you're coming up with. But if you're looking to challenge them, you leave this box unchecked. And then again, here's case sensitive, meaning that it has to be a certain way for it to be correct. So keeping all of that in mind as you're setting up your fill in the blank, you align your question with your learning objective, and there is fill in the blank. Now the last one is matching. Okay, now matching, as you see here, oops, screen stuff. As you see here in matching, it's as it sounds. You match one question with one answer. Let me show you what I'm talking about, right? In this example, zoom in. Oh, okay, so it's not gonna work. So as you see in this question, it's asking for them to match the state with its capital. So Alabama, Montgomery, Maine, Augusta, Montana, Helena, Idaho, Du Bois, right? So what you're gonna do, oops, let me go back to my regular size. So what you're going to, all right. So what you're gonna do is you tell them what to match at the top of the question or the text box up here. And then you put what that is. So the question would be the state, right? Because that's the question you're asking. And then the answer would be the capitals of those states, right? As you see here, you're setting it up as it should be correct, right? So let's do that. And I apologize if any of these answers are incorrect. I'm still in summer mode. So I'm pretty sure these are incorrect, but I just want you to get the idea. And if my spelling is off, I apologize as well. Okay. Again, and also for those that need less answer choices, again, you see here, remove blanks. You need to make sure that the answer, question and answer is blank. And if you want to add more, you have that possibility as well. Here, what filler words means is you see here, as you see filler words, you can add additional capitals if you're looking to challenge your students. So if you're trying to rule out the possibility of narrowing it down based on process of elimination, the filler words can make it more challenging. And then again, you see you get partial credit if they're able to match pieces of that answer correctly. And then subjective question, meaning that you decide what grade to give that student. I wouldn't really mess with this if I were you. That would just make it more tedious, which is exactly what you're trying to avoid. Okay, there's your line again, and then you create the question. And that's going to mess up because I didn't put text. I'm pretty sure I misspelled that, but it's okay. All right. Okay. So here we go. We have our questions, right? I have my question bank filled. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my home page. Scroll in for you. I'm going to go to home, right? And this is in the resources tab, by the way. We're still in resources. So what I have now is my question bank folder. And what I want to do is I add a resource, which would be in this case a test quiz, right? But you're saying, didn't you just create that? Actually, we didn't. We just created questions. We didn't actually create the test quiz yet. So that would be that next step. So we click on add test quiz. And we give it a name, how many points, right? And there are options if you need to, but notice the options are pretty straightforward. You don't really need to fill out. The only thing that's important is the name. Click submit. Okay. Now, as you see here, we're in the actual test quiz for this 3 weeks checkpoint, right? Before we add questions, I want to show you some of the settings, right? Again, here are your instructions. You place them, tell them how much time they have, if you want, how many times they can do it, just all the instructions they need in order to complete this test quiz correctly. Now, here are a few items to keep in mind. Time limit, right? If you're going to give them that, how many times they can attempt the test, the paging, meaning that do you want to give them 1 page per question or use page breaks, which means that they will see parts of the quiz or the test quiz as they're scrolling through. Randomized order, meaning that the questions and how they show up. So You notice when we created our questions, we had them in a certain order. But when the test quiz is generated, the order shuffles up for every student. Question review, meaning that they can look at their questions, kind of review over it, just similar to what they do on a regular test on paper. Here's another one, important, resumable, right? So if, and this is my recommendation, I would say yes, because in case something happens, like power goes out, internet goes out, if it's not resumable, it's gonna grade it for them. Okay, and then that means you're gonna have to delete and then reassign it to the student. You don't wanna go through all that. So just allow it to be resumable, meaning that if they accidentally click out of it, they have the ability to get back in with no penalties of that nature. Submissions, it allows them to see if you want. Obviously, no is default, so that means they turn it in and they don't see the grade, right? Meaning, or they don't get to review over the questions is my actual correction. And then the last option is yes with correct answers. I would avoid this, my opinion. You don't want to give them that because then they can share that with others. Okay. Here's what I was talking about in printing options, right? In short answer, how many lines they get. In short answer, you can modify that as much as you need. And in essay question, they can go up to a full page if you need to, however many pages you need. And what I mean by printing out, so let's say you give this 3 weeks checkpoint, but some students possibly don't feel comfortable doing this online. You have the ability to print. So if I click print, right, notice I can print it on a plain piece of paper. I can fit questions to page, or I can put one question per page. That's up to you. You make that decision when you do that. And then you simply click print, and then all of the questions you have on this test quiz are printed, right? So again, you don't have to create this twice. You just create it once on Schoology, and you have the ability to use it on paper as well, okay? You also have the ability to preview, right? There's your preview, meaning that you can look at the questions and ensure that they are correct, they work. That's kind of where preview is at. Okay, let me go back here. Click on test. Oops. As you notice, I'm back on my resources, and what I need to do is I need to actually go back to my questions. So to do that, I go to the gear as you see here on the right, and I'm going to click on edit questions. Okay, and this is what you should see, right? Add question. I'm going to click on it. And what's going to happen now is you see, remember we saw these earlier in the training. Do I need to do this? No, because I've already done what I needed to in my question banks. So I click on from question banks. Okay, now here are two things, right? If you have a lot of questions, and what I mean by a lot of questions is 10 different questions per one question. So what I mean is this, let's say you give a 5-question quiz, test quiz, right? In each of those questions, you have a sub amount of questions. What I mean is you have 5 questions you can pick from for number 1, 5 questions you can pick from number 2, so on and so forth. So that means in total, I have 25 questions that I can pull from, right? Each question has a sub number of questions. I would then use random, right? Now, if you're just starting, you're going to more than likely use individual questions, which means that you pick which questions you want to show up. Now, can you use both? Yes, you can. But with random questions, you would need a lot of questions to make it work. And let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's start with individual. Individual questions, you will notice as I pulled it up, I select the folder, meaning that I'm getting really deep into the question bank folder, which is right here. Oops, not that one. I actually put it in this folder, the first 9 weeks. And then here's a 3-week checkpoint, which you see right here are 6 questions. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. Okay, now here are a few things, and hopefully you can see this. You will see the objective, right? And you will see the type of question. Now, if I like that question, I will click on it, right? If I like all my questions, I will then click this box up here and it selects all of them. Okay, here's the next part. This is 6 questions, right? I have the ability to set however many points I want each question to be. Okay, so it's at 30, 60. So if I want different weight values for my different types of questions, I can do that. I set that up. Once I've done that, I click Add Questions. And let's watch the magic. And there it is, right? I have my 6 questions. Scroll over here. Notice 100 points. Okay. And the next part of that was, remember, printing. I want to just kind of show you what this looks like. I'll fit them to the page, which is okay, no big deal. And that is what it would look like, right? If I were to actually print out, look at that, it has the name. You then can put the score if you want. It will show the student how many points each question is worth. And then remember question 4, the reason it shows up like this is because we placed an image. So do keep that in mind with your image sizes. And it's a good thing I showed you that so you can see how that works. Okay, there it is, fill in the blank. There is your matching, right? And that was it. That is going to show you how to print that. Okay. Now let me do it the other way. So this was individual. Now I'm going to do random. So with random, what happens is not only you're selecting a folder now, right? The whole folder. If you notice, if I click into the folder, I can't select any of the questions because remember, it's random. So let me back up. So I select the folder. Remember, it's the same 6 questions. Nothing's changed. I select question bank. Okay. Now this is pretty different, right? So out of the 6 questions, I can do several things. I can ask it to pull all of the questions, or I can ask it, well, I only want to pull 3 of those 6 questions, so I do that, right? And then the points per question, let's just say 33 for the sake of this. And then I add it, and then watch what happens. So here's what happens. Questions 7 through 9, because remember I selected 3 questions I wanted to pull from, can be asked from these 6 questions. Now that means that students don't know which questions they're going to get. Some could get true and false, some can get multiple choice, some can get ordering, and then the others may not even see any of the other question types. So if you're using different question types, random may be kind of something you may want to avoid. Random to me would be for question types that are similar. So if I'm using true or false, all 6 of them are the same, then that's how I'm going to pull random. And that's where you kind of get your bang for your buck in terms of the random question set. But again, if this is something you're just starting, use individual questions. All right. Now the last thing, this is the finality of all of this, is moving this to a course, right? So the way I'm going to show it to you is kind of the easiest way that I found to do this. So what I do is, here's my test quiz, click on the gear, and I'm going to add to course, right? For me, I don't have a lot of courses, but you as a teacher will have all your courses. You click on the course you want to send that to. You'll notice if I want to put it in a folder, I don't have to, but if I do, if I'm organized, I can do that. How many points? And then the category, I've already created one called assignment, right? And then the period for you will be defaulted to the first 9 weeks. You click add, right? You can also click multiple courses, but you have to fill out the information the same for each of the courses that you select. Okay, I'm going to click add. Okay, there you go. Template was added. Let me check to make sure. Okay, and there you see it, 3-week checkpoint. I'm going to click on it. There you see my 9 questions, right? I can also manipulate it from here, but keep in mind that if you're a teacher that has multiple courses, you want to try to avoid going course by course if all possible, right? So this is why I showed you doing it from resources. Also, for those of you that may be working together, you can do the same thing in groups. If you already have groups in your schools, let me see if I may not have my own group. I'll create one real quick, not a problem. Right? And here is my group, right? So what that means is that if I am working with others, I would go to my resources, as you can see here, and you will notice something very similar, which is the same thing as you have in your resources, the same thing is available in groups. So what I mean by that is that everybody has access to this. And if you're creating a test as a group, this will probably be the way to go. And notice question bank. This would allow for collaboration, meaning that you can all work on it simultaneously, save yourself time. And then the same process applies to whenever you are then getting ready to move it to your course, that's where it would be moved to. But I don't have a course yet, so I can't do that. But the idea is that you would move it to your resources and then you could push it over to courses or vice versa, which means this. I'm going to go to courses. I'm going to add materials, import from resources, zoom back out. Notice the group, right? There's my group I created. And then I could easily add the assessment into the course there as well. Okay, so let me go ahead, exit out.